Well, welcome back to the My First Rodeo podcast, the show that asks really cool, interesting, and famous people about the various firsts on their paths to success. I am Mike Freed, and I am so excited today, maybe as excited as I've ever been on this show. And we've interviewed some really cool people, and I get excited every time. But Kate Snow is our guest today. Yeah, that Kate Snow, the Kate Snow on Dateline NBC, the Kate Snow on NBC, the Kate Snow that was one of the co-hosts of Good Morning America in the weekend, one of the White House reporters back for ABC, who covered the Hillary Clinton campaign, the Sarah Palin campaign. Yeah, that Kate Snow, the one who's interviewed all these amazing people, Queen Latifah, Bon Jovi, Usain Bolt. I mean, I could go on and on. So if you know the name Kate Snow and can't place her, hopefully that gives you some context, but you know her, you definitely know her. And what she does so well is tells stories, whether it's a human interest story, whether it's a personality like one of these famous people, or whether it's breaking and tragic news, which is actually how she and I happened to meet about 20 years ago. She brings this humanity to it, this kindness, and she pulls it all together in a really informative way that not only informs you about the information, but informs you about the heart of the people involved in the stories. And I think she does that as well as anybody. She is, I think, the most important compliment you could give anybody who narrates the news of the day for a living is that they are trustworthy. And Kate Snow is so very trustworthy in the job that she does. So I'm just honored to be able to talk to her today. I think you're going to enjoy this interview. We talk about a lot of really cool things, including how she got her start, her first rodeos, and that she went to college not even knowing what she wanted to do, got into communications, actually thinking it was sort of kind of something else, and then somehow wound up doing news when she thought she was going to do DJ work, and took off from there. And her experiences after her graduate degree at Georgetown University, my alma mater as well. My daughter's going there, so that was fun to hear, fun to talk about. Just took off, and she paid her dues. She did all the things that one often does on their way up, and moved around in kind of an unconventional way, but in a very deliberate way and in a very persistent way. And every opportunity she's had, she's done a tremendous job with it. So I guess I'm a fan. I guess you could tell I'm a fan. I think you will be too. If you're not already after hearing this interview, I think you will be. Listen, I always like to start the show with something good, important, or impactful. And I will just say that one of the topics we talk about during our conversation is mental health. And I will say that just do this, would you? If you have a friend that looks like he's having a hard day or she's having a hard day, just remember those people. Talk to them in a way that gives them an opportunity to open up. If you have a friend that you haven't talked to in a while, be encouraging. Because I tell you what, those, I'll call them interventions, those opportunities to just let people know that you see them and that what they're going through or have gone through matters. It could be the difference between could be the difference between life and death. And so I encourage you to do that. That's something that I've tried to be more deliberate about. There's certainly seasons in my life that I've been through that have been difficult. And the people that reach out occasionally, periodically, deliberately, just to say, hey, I see you and I care about you, have been some of the most important impacts in turning things around for me. And I hope I've done the same for others. So friendly nudge. There are people out there hurting. Maybe you're hurting. Connections are the best ways to keep that from turning from something that's solvable to something that sometimes can't be solved. Okay, enough of that. I am so excited to bring to you my conversation with the incredible senior national correspondent for NBC, Kate Snow. Hey, thanks for coming on my show. Gosh, I appreciate it. You need this like a hole in the head, so I'm grateful.
Oh, stop. No, I'm happy to be here.
I was trying to think of comparisons, and I was thinking interviewing the consummate interviewer is like being the Lyft driver for Mario Andretti or something. I'm like telling him about my driving on the way, and he's like, yeah, it's pretty good.
The funny part is that I hate being on this end. Like, I love asking the questions, Michael. I don't really like answering the questions.
Well, I don't know. It seems like reporting to some degree, particularly the interview format, which you do so well, has evolved to some extent where it is more of a conversation now, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's right.
Kind of breaks.
At least that's the way I do it.
I think you do. You do it so effortlessly. And I don't know anybody that has had a career like you have, and I'm sure you still have plenty more left, but where you have so many serious interviews. You've covered so many political campaigns in the White House, but then you also have so many personality interviews where you've interviewed Bill Nye and Jewel and Jeff Daniels and Rick Springfield and all those fun ones that are still serious. But how do you navigate those sort of different formats and different purposes for interviews?
Yeah, well, for people who don't know, the ones you just mentioned are actually all more recent that I've done on The Drink, which is a little series that I do called The Drink with Kate Snow, where we sit down and we have a drink of the person's choice. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It can be anything they like. And I talk about how they got to where they are. So that's actually been this really great outlet for me to have this other part of my life where I don't have to talk about, the latest breaking news or the, horrible things that happen in the world. I can just sit with somebody and we can just chat about how they got there. And I'm sure, like you with your podcast, you learn so much from other people and hearing their journeys that it's delightful. I love it.
Yeah. And you do it so well. It's just nice to watch and listen to it because it just feels like you're listening in, to two people having a drink and chatting and getting to know each other a little bit.
Oh, good. That's the idea. Can I shamelessly plug that
please.
it is available on YouTube and on the NBC website. If you just Google Kate Snow, The Drink, you can find them. Because we've done we've done more than 40, I think maybe even almost 50 now, conversations. So
I was looking out. I will actually help you promote because you got Queen Latifah, Dr. Ruth, Bon Jovi, Jay Leno, Michael Phelps, Salman Rushdie, which is pretty important. I don't know how to pronounce her name, but from The Office, Mindy Kaling. Is that how you pronounce her name? Kaling.
Mindy Kaling.
I knew I'd messed that
Clearly,
one
you
up.
are not a fan of The Office. Wow.
I'm a fan of The Office. I'm just bad with remembering famous people's names.
She was fun. She was a lot of fun. She's very funny.
She is outstanding. And then I will entice people even more to go listen because you asked the most important question to Rick Springfield, and that is there a Jesse's girl? So
that was so fun.
I won't blow the answer.
Some of these are like pinch me moments for myself too. I mean, actually, Rick Springfield and I had met before, long story, but we met years ago and we'd been in touch a couple of times. So I wasn't completely freaked out to sit with him, but I used to listen to Jesse's Girl.
Oh, yeah.
When I don't want to say how old, I was young when that came out and it shaped some years of my life. So it was weird to talk to the Rick Springfield about his iconic song, which, by the way, I found out that 20 somethings, they don't know who if you say who's Rick Springfield, they don't know the name. But if you say Jesse's Girl, everybody knows that song.
Isn't that
everybody?
Funny? It hasn't been remade as far as I know. I'm not aware of a famous remake.
No, it's the original.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think Rick Springfield was my third concert at Meriwether Post Pavilion in Columbia, Maryland.
Oh, wow. You're going there.
Yeah. You're
dating yourself.
Yeah, I think I won't date me because it would date you. I think we're about the same age. I'm a 60s baby, but very first Styx, Pieces of a Dream was my first.
Oh, that's a good one.
That was a good one. You
want to know mine?
Yeah, please.
The Cars.
That was my second. The Let's Go tour, right? Let's Go tour, right? Wasn't it the Let's Go tour?
Yeah, I think so. The big album, the one that had all the hits. Was that Let's Go?
It was like part of a person and glasses. I remember, and a lot of hair flowing.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Mullets. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fun. Where did you see the Cars back in those days?
Would have been at the Saratoga Performing Arts Center in upstate New York because I grew up pretty close to there.
Yeah, so that gets us on topic. Sorry to take us down a rabbit hole, but Burnt Hills, New York, is that right? Where you grew up?
Right.
And before that, Bangor, Maine, but I'm guessing you moved pretty young?
Yeah, so my dad was teaching. My dad's a professor, and he was teaching at the University of Maine in Orono, Maine. Bangor is the nearest big hospital. So I was born in Bangor. And just recently, I was up in Maine covering the eclipse. And sometimes people will come up because they see it on Wikipedia or wherever that I was born in Maine. And they're like, "You're a Mainer." And I'm like, well, we moved when I was 3 months old. So yes,
Okay.
I am technically, but I
Yeah.
don't have memories from Maine.
Yeah.
Yeah, my whole growing up life was Burnt Hills, New York, which is a small town. If you know where Albany, New York is, it
Yeah.
is out about 45 minutes from Albany, north and between Schenectady and Saratoga.
Okay. Those are good things to learn how to pronounce when you're young so you can go on to a broadcast career. You can pronounce
Yes,
Schenectady. They just give you a microphone, right?
That's right. That's how it works. I'm holding a microphone in my hand right now.
I know. I feel bad making you do that, but I
It's
couldn't
okay.
see
Sounds
having
better.
Kate Snow not having good sound quality on my podcast.
Right.
So you didn't have to go far because it just so happened there was an Ivy League school in the neighborhood. You went to Cornell. I know it's not the neighborhood, but
It's
also,
not quite the neighborhood. And I would pause you for 1 second
yeah.
that I didn't even know Cornell existed for most of my growing up years. And it wasn't until I guess high school, somehow I figured out, I guess my parents probably told me that there was this place that was well known called Cornell. But I was looking all over the place. I was looking at state schools. I was looking at a lot of things. And then I went and visited the campus and just fell in love with really the campus of Cornell, which is so iconic. They use it in movies all the time. It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
And I just thought it was the iconic, classic, college, I don't know, the dream I had, right, to go to sort of a typical college. And it was 3 hours from my home, which is about right. So I ended up there. I'm really lucky in hindsight that I got in when I did. Didn't know what I wanted to do.
Well,
And
obviously
there I was.
you were a good student, and yeah, I thought about I got into Cornell for law school and thought about going, but it was 3 hours from home for you, but for me it would have been forever and a day, and
Oh, yeah.
I just couldn't imagine what I would do in the summers and so forth.
Actually, it's Ithaca, New York is where Cornell is beautiful in the summer. Like,
Yeah,
that's the best time. You just don't want to be there in like December, January, February.
I guess that's right. I was just thinking there weren't a lot of big law firm jobs in
Oh,
Ithaca.
true. Yeah,
So,
you'd probably have to come down to New York City, maybe. I don't know.
but we have this in common because I did go on to go to Georgetown Law, and I know you have a
Yes.
Master's of Foreign Service, and my daughter is in the Foreign Service program right now.
I did not know that. Hoya Saxa.
Yeah, indeed. What rocks, right?
What a rock, I think.
Oh, it's just a rock. I always wonder.
I don't know. That's what I heard at some point, that Hoya, that's the slogan at Georgetown, is like the thing people cheer is Hoya Saxa. I think it means what a rock.
I always told people meant what rocks. It seemed a lot more manly.
That sounds better. That sounds better.
For me to say, maybe not for you. I don't know. But amazing pedigree. So where you say you got to Cornell without knowing you wanted to do what you've done so well?
Yeah,
Is that right?
I really didn't know. It's kind of a long story, but Cornell, basically my dad as a professor was like, "Hey, let's look at the course catalog and go through and kind of pick things that interest you." And we literally, it was back in the day when they were printed, right? And we looked at a catalog and I circled classes that I liked, and a lot of them were in communications. So I thought I was going to study the art, like the science of communication. So how people talk to each other, so the social science of communication.
Or like linguistics, I guess.
Maybe. And I thought that I wanted to be a professor like my dad. And I mean, this is when I was 17.
Yeah.
And I got to Cornell, and toward the end of my freshman year, there's a sign up on the wall of my dorm that says, "Come to an organizational meeting for WVBR, the off-campus radio station," that was fueled by, like, mostly the people that worked there were students at Cornell. Free labor, right?
Mm-hmm.
I went to this meeting with my best friend Monica, thinking that I wanted to be a radio DJ, play music. And I get there and somebody says, "No, we don't really need any more DJs. What we need are news people." And I was like, I guess maybe I could do that. So that's it. Like right there, I start covering city council meetings and car crashes and visitors, big high profile people would come speak at Cornell or Ithaca College, and I would cover that. And the next thing you know, by senior year, I'm so interested. I started taking more practical communication courses about news writing. I started by senior year, I was the morning drive. You remember what morning drive
Oh
was?
yeah,
Like when
the
everybody was in
zoo
their
and oh
cars.
yeah,
I was the morning drive news anchor.
yeah.
And I loved it. I mean, that, if you look back, there is a pretty straight line from that decision point to where I am now.
And that's what year of college?
Well, freshman year is when I got involved. And then by senior year, I was doing the morning drive. I looked for radio jobs all over the place as a senior in college. Quick story. I papered the walls of my apartment, seriously, like put them up on the wall, the letters of rejection that I got
Oh no.
from like every single radio station. It was really hard to break into radio. I think it still is. It's probably even harder now, especially radio news.
Right.
I got rejected right and left. I saved the letters on my wall because if we had 5 rejection letters, we could get a free pitcher of beer at the Palms, which is a institution at Cornell.
Wow.
And I ended up getting into Georgetown, as you mentioned, and it was kind of a no-brainer. I actually got a good scholarship, and I was like, I'm just going to keep going to school.
Wow. Like inadvertent success.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was very interested in studying international affairs. I had minored in that at Cornell. And I was fascinated by Latin America. I speak Spanish. So yeah, that was what I focused on at Georgetown.
That's amazing. So, and by the way, for our younger listeners, a letter of rejection is what we call nowadays ghosting, I think is right.
Ghosting is they don't even write back, right?
I think that's all you do.
Is like the email or the text that you get saying, no, thank you.
Yeah, it's a form of some sort. But in the old days, you'd get somewhat of a thoughtful letter that wasn't even necessarily, and I want to ask you about this, legally compliant. I mean, nowadays nobody says the reason you're not getting a job. But what was some of the early feedback?
Lawyer, right? I don't know. You're the lawyer, but that sounds right.
Yeah, I just wonder. Clearly, the broadcasting industry back then, in particular, and maybe to this day, didn't always have a great track record of hiring the right people for the right reasons and promoting the right people for the right reasons. So, what did you feel like as you were getting rejected?
At that time, at that early time in my, just coming out of college, there just was a lack of jobs. Frankly, I just think there weren't a lot of positions available, and I was just knocking on doors even without seeing a job help wanted ad, right? Like I was just trying. But going to Georgetown ended up being a fantastic decision in hindsight. I learned so much there. And then by the end of those 2 years, I continued to do like overnight shifts. I was in Washington, D.C. doing some overnight shifts in radio just to make money, cutting tape, like editing radio tape, if you can picture that, editing stories. And then at the end, I got through a fluke, through a friend of the dean of the school, I got connected to somebody at CNN who passed my resume along, and I got a job as a booker, a producer at CNN. So it just ended up being, I'm very lucky, I think, that I got this connection. So,
and that's right out of Georgetown. You start working for CNN.
So 23 years old, moved to Atlanta. This is like, most people don't even know this about my past. I was a behind the scenes producer / booker. The bookers are the people that find and connect with guests that we have on the air, which to this day, like today, I had 2 guests that a booker found and brought in.
That's how you and I connected, actually.
That's right.
Way back when, but that's another story. But yeah,
yes.
So I know how the bookers were.
Well, when did we connect first?
It must be close to 15 years ago. It was the Summer Thompson case out of Orange Park, Florida. Summer had been abducted and murdered, and the media just descended on the area, and the mother, Dina, through a friend of a friend, asked if I could just help, just sort of navigate the process as if I knew how to navigate it. And it certainly met a lot of people along the way, but you and your team were just first class in terms of how graciously you treated her and the family and everything.
That was a moving interview. I remember it vividly. I just feel for that family so much. It was a terrible story.
Yeah, they've
But
done
I
a
got to meet you.
yeah, absolutely. And you've been so gracious and so relational. And I have a feeling it's not just me. You're just treat everybody like you're an ordinary person and not the amazing superstar that you are.
I am an ordinary person. Let's just be clear. Like, I am a total ordinary person. I'm about to put sneakers on and run to the train after we're done here.
That's pretty cool. Well, not only aren't you ordinary, and I won't let you get away with that, but you talk to extraordinary people on a daily basis. And that's gotta, I don't know, that's gotta be both humbling, but it could also, if you were a different kind of person, it could feed your own ego, couldn't it?
I guess. Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know. I think it's weird to be recognized. It's weird to be a little bit famous. I don't think I'm not very famous, but I'm enough that people look at me quizzically, like in the airport. They'll kind of
Hmm.
look at me like, do I know you from somewhere? I've even had
Right.
people come up to me and say, like, are you the mom of on a soccer team that my kid is on?
It's just
um,
familiarity, but they don't know where.
yeah, but they can't place it, right? So I'm not next level. I'm not, trying to think of a good, like Hoda and Savannah, the Today Show, they're next level. Like, they can't go anywhere. They can't go to the grocery store without people stopping them. And they're really, really grounded people too. So
Hmm.
I don't think it has to feed your ego, but I've met some celebrities that it definitely does.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I, I'm just like I really am just like everybody else. I'm doing a job. It's just that my job is way more visible than most people's jobs.
Yeah, which also makes it not that I meant to take it there, but it's got to make the consequence of mistakes that much greater, right?
Mm.
I mean, obviously, I remember when we had our 15 minutes of fame when you were interviewing and other networks were, and some of those appearances I did with them. And I was thinking, boy, I could say something right now that could ruin my life. Like, not that I had something
Oh,
in my mind, but I'm like, whatever you do in
right,
this
right.
moment is
You got to
going
be
to be
careful.
memorable. Of course, you do it every day. So,
Yeah, I don't think about that so much. Well, I don't think about let me put it this way. I don't think about myself sort of making some egregious error, but
hmm.
I do we are incredibly conscious as a team of the role that we're playing as journalists and the fact that we have to get our facts right. I mean, that is, just incredibly the most important thing for everyone around me at NBC News. I mean, we have standards here. We're very, very careful. We don't report something like today. We had breaking news and we didn't know very much. And I said on TV, we don't know very much right now, but here's what we do know because we want to be transparent,
Hmm.
because you're right. It is some days it can be tricky, but
Hmm.
you just
Yeah.
have to be careful.
I'm sure that's right. It seems like the value of a scoop, which I think is almost worth more to people in the media than it is to people watching. Like, we don't know
That's
who
certainly
got the
true.
story first. We just know, yeah,
Especially now with social media and with so many outlets that people are looking at legitimate media, legitimate journalists. I don't think anybody pays attention to who's first. I think they pay attention to who's right and has their facts straight.
yeah. Or in case of me, and maybe I'm the rarity, I want someone to tell me we don't know all the facts yet. I don't need
Mhm.
it to be sensational. I don't mind if the news is boring. I mean, to some extent, it should be somewhat uninteresting and informative, but sure, certainly it's entertainment, but it's also primarily information. And I don't know if that's as widely valued nowadays by everyone as it is by me.
It is by me too. I can say that.
Yeah, well, it shows. It shows. Now, I know you went to CNN, but wasn't there a time where you were at KOA TV in Albuquerque, New Mexico?
KOAT.
KOA.
Yes.
Oh, excuse me.
Yes. There's
KOAT.
a T on the end. KOAT, Action 7
All
News, live
right.
at 5.
I like it.
Um, they're still out there. They are the ABC affiliate in Albuquerque, New Mexico.
Okay.
Do you want the whole story or the short version?
Well, it's one of you. It's your first rodeo out of Georgetown, so I
Yeah.
think it's important.
Yeah. So I'm at CNN, as I said, I'm at CNN booking and being a producer. And maybe a year in, I was like, I had done radio already, right? So I was like, maybe I could do what I did on radio on TV. Maybe I could be in front of the camera. So I start trying to meet everybody in the building I can to figure out how to get a job on the other side of the camera to be a reporter. And you have to have still to this day, you have to prove that you can do it. You have to kind of have a reel. We call it a used to be a tape, but now it's a digital reel, right? Just a compilation of stories that you've done on TV. Well, I wasn't on TV. So
Right.
I had to kind of makeshift, I met all these other 20 somethings that I knew at CNN. I was like, teach me how to tell a story. Teach me how to work a camera. Teach me how to shoot a stand up, which is when you're on camera. And I would go out on Sundays with a local TV reporter. God bless her. She took me under her wing, let me come out and follow her and just like shadow her.
Wow.
And then she would even, I don't even know if this would happen today, but she would actually share some tape so that I could then make my own story. I wasn't going to copy her. I was going to write my own,
Wow.
but she'd give me the video so that I could cut it together in like the nighttime at my job or on the weekends. I put together this tape. I sent it out to about 100 stations all over the country. I'm now 25 years old. My parents are like, what are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
You have a good job at CNN and where are you going? Guess how many job offers I got out of 100 tapes that went out to small stations?
All you needed was one.
All I needed was one.
I'm going to guess. Okay, that's pretty good.
I got 3.
That's really good.
I put 3 fingers up so you saw me. Yeah. I got 3 job offers. Helena, Montana.
Yeah.
Columbus, Georgia, which was really close to Atlanta where I was living. So I was thinking about that.
Right.
And big military base and presence. Third one was not Albuquerque, New Mexico, but like they were going to make me a bureau of the station based in Albuquerque. So I was going to be in Carlsbad, New Mexico, southeast corner of New Mexico where the caverns are. It's a national park. I chose New Mexico. Montana was going to be less than my brother was making that summer making pizza. Mm. So that was like, I can't. I couldn't pay my student loans if I had done that.
Right.
And I don't know. I love the West. I've always loved the Southwest. I love to hike and camp and be outdoors. So it was kind of a no-brainer to go to New Mexico. But I end up in this very small place for a while. And then I moved up to Roswell, New Mexico, where the aliens landed.
Okay.
And that didn't even faze you. The alien, yeah.
Well, I should have said allegedly, right?
I do think this is a whole sidebar, but I do think something happened.
This could be the most important part of the interview. Do tell.
Just when I was in Roswell briefly, I interviewed a lot of people because it was approaching the 50th anniversary of what they call the Roswell incident. I think I talked to people who were perfectly sane, normal people who said they saw things, and too many, like I talked to so many people that saw something. I don't know that it was aliens, but I do think something happened in the desert and it was covered up and whatever it was.
Wow.
The government didn't want people to see it. I think. That's just me, my personal opinion.
No, it's more than personal because you were there. But I think it's always like in every movie, and then just that undercurrent of the government dishonesty tends to compound.
I don't want to go there. I'm not a whole conspiracy theorist or anything like that. But all I'm saying is I talked to people who definitely saw something with their own eyes that was weird.
That
so
is
who knows what it was?
I think the reason the government doesn't tell us is because they're afraid we're going to buy all the toilet paper, because that seems to be what happened when we think something scary happens. We buy toilet paper.
Anyway, I moved from Roswell to Albuquerque eventually. And then I was like at the mothership in Albuquerque for 2 years.
Wow.
Yeah, that was great. I love New Mexico.
And you learned how to do what that person who was taking you out in Atlanta was teaching you, and put it all together.
In a place where, well, especially like when I was Carlsbad and Roswell, I felt like not so many people were going to notice if I messed up. Mm-hmm. So if you, oh my gosh, I shouldn't tell you this, Michael, but if you go online and Google Kate Snow, New Mexico, KOAT, you will find a compilation that KOAT made more recently, maybe, I don't remember. It was a few years ago, at least. I was out there giving a speech in New Mexico. And so they jokingly went back and found all of my early live, not just live, but taped pieces. It's hilarious to watch.
Pretty good.
No, because nobody is pretty good when they start
Yeah.
out, right? Everybody makes, I mean, when you were a first time lawyer, were you
Yeah.
pretty good? You were
No, I'm
okay.
not. Yeah, no, absolutely not. That's got
Exactly.
to be
You
fun to
learn as
watch.
you go. So anyway, I made some mistakes out there. I mean, performance mistakes, like
Yeah.
hopefully not factual errors, but like I looked goofy, right?
Yeah.
And I wasn't comfortable. It takes a long time in this business to get comfortable talking on TV. So,
Yeah. So
yeah.
how do you evolve to that? Because you leave from there and you go back to CNN and now you're on air,
Yeah.
right?
A bunch of things happen. I meet a guy named Chris in Albuquerque, and we're pretty like intense kind of fast. And I'm like, hey, my contract's coming up and I'm leaving. I have to go to the next, because that's how this business kind of works is once you're in one place, you try to go to a slightly bigger place,
Sure.
right? So I applied all over and Chris said he wanted to come with me, which is great. He's now my husband of almost 25 years.
Chris Bro, who's
Chris
pretty
Bro.
well known in his own right.
Thank you. Yeah, he has a radio show himself. Actually, ironically, he is a radio DJ.
Yeah,
the
yeah.
thing I didn't do. He also has a day job as well. But anyway, my offers were Denver, Portland, Oregon, I think Minneapolis, and I chose Atlanta. And to this day, my husband Chris gives me a hard time because he wanted so badly to stay west and move to Denver.
Yeah.
But we ended up back in Atlanta because, as you said, it was a CNN job, but it was kind of like a junior level within CNN. I was not full-fledged CNN. I was working for all the affiliates, all the local stations that have deals with CNN to take their content. So I would go to any breaking news and cover it for the affiliates, if that makes sense.
Yeah,
People don't even realize that CNN has affiliates, but they have deals with stations that take their content because they can't, like the Florida station can't go to the plane crash. So I was sent and I would report for the Florida station. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. So it's almost white labeled for their network because it wasn't necessarily even portrayed as a CNN reporter, right?
Well, I can't remember. I think they would say, yeah. But anyway, I did that for a couple of years. It was really hard. It taught me how to be live over and over. I mean, it was like Mary and Sue, the plane crashed here. And then it'd be like, Dick and Barbara, the plane, you over and over and over. Repetition makes you better. Yeah. So it really got me much better at the sort of live shot TV part of things. And then I was able to move to Washington with CNN. And that was a big change where I covered Capitol Hill for years. I think it was about 5 years. You want me to keep going?
Yeah, no, I was trying to track it myself because I was thinking that you become White House correspondent.
That's the next step for ABC. So I'm at CNN for a while and then ABC, my contract. It's so big deal in my universe is when your contract opens, like when your time is up on one contract, you can shop around for a little while. You know this as a lawyer.
Sure.
Legally, you can't shop around while you're under contract, but there's a period at the end, a window where you can look around. So I looked around and ABC was willing to bring me to the White House as their Good Morning America White House correspondent, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
Big jump for me because now I'm on network television and did that, covered George W. Bush for a year. And then I got another crazy story for you. The network ABC was thinking about starting Good Morning America Weekend. They hadn't had one for a while. And they hired the male, a guy named Bill Weir, who is still on TV and actually was full circle, was on my show today with me talking about his new book. He just wrote a book. It's fantastic.
Funny?
Okay. Life as We Know It is what the book is called.
Okay.
Anyway, they hire Bill. I raise my hand. I'm like, I want to be the female co-anchor, or the co-anchor. I didn't know it had to be female. And they were like, sure, we'll consider you. I go on vacation in April of this year and I'm with my sister and my new son, Zach, is young. My husband's there. We're driving to the beach on vacation and my phone rings and it's the head of talent is what we call it in the business. The person who manages it sounds bad, but the talent, the people like me, the people that are on the air.
Right.
She calls and she's like, hey, just want to let you know, FYI, Bill Weir is going to be in New York tomorrow and we're going to be screen testing him with various different people. as co-anchors to see who we want to hire. No worries. I know you're on vacation. You don't need to be here. We really think you're more Washington. We really think you're more like politics in Washington is where your sweet spot is. And we don't see you for this role. So of course I go, well, what if I could be, my vacation's over. If I could be there tomorrow, would that be okay? You wouldn't mind if I came, right? And she's like, no, I guess if your vacation's over, sure. Yeah. Can you be here? And I'm like, absolutely. Hang up the phone, turn to my sister in the car. We're driving to the beach. I'm like, I'm going to have to get a red eye tonight. The vacation was not over.
No,
of course it wasn't, right?
Yeah.
Well, no, it was near over. It was like we had 2 or 3 more days left. I leave my husband with my kid. That night I jump on a plane. The next morning I have nothing but vacation clothes, like shorts and t-shirts. I go to Saks Fifth Avenue on Fifth Avenue, New York, buy everything, a suit, high heels, a handbag, like all of it, jewelry, everything. Walk into the screen test. And I guess I did pretty well. I got the job. They didn't tell me for like 3 months, but I got the job.
Now that's interesting because, and back then, I would imagine the weekend in particular was going to be, for lack of a better word, a little more serious than the weekday, a little more political, a little more what's going on in the news.
No, you're thinking of the Sunday morning talk show, shows that are about politics, which are more serious. The weekend Good Morning America show actually had it was about the same as weekday, but it had a little bit of a lighter because it was weekends. You could do like entertainment. What are the big movies this weekend? Things like that. But it had like most morning shows, we had a very serious first 20 minutes. And then we got a little less, like a little more featurey as we went along. It was a brand new show with a brand new group of people, and we had so much fun.
Yeah.
I love, to this day, some of my best friends are that crew. We get together all the time. Actually, we have like reunions. I ended up being on that show for 6 years, anchoring, getting up at 3 a.m. at Saturdays and Sundays.
Yeah.
Which is hard. And also continuing to report during the week. I covered Hillary Clinton's campaign, for example.
Right.
I would go out on Sunday nights, cover her, come home Friday night, do the weekend show, no days off. That was, So it was.
I didn't realize that all. I didn't realize that all overlapped. And so was there a thought? I mean, it sounds like, I don't know. I don't know if was it impulse? Was it design? Because, moving from, White House correspondent, that's the most newsy thing you can do. And back then, you really were reporting news. Nowadays, it's politics and entertainment kind of overlap a little more. But back then,
I would take issue with that.
I don't mean the reporting. I just mean the content.
Real news people are still news people. But,
I just mean the stuff that's happening to politicians is more entertaining.
Yeah. I hear you, and I'm not going to go there at all, but I hear you. Here's what I would say. The White House job was fantastic. And I could see at that point that if you're going to jump to anchoring, which is frankly eventually a more family-friendly schedule because you're not traveling all over the country, I could see that this was a step to do that. So I think for family reasons and career reasons, I just thought it would be good positioning to like get that anchor job if I could. Mm-hmm. And I did, and continue to report also. So I kind of had the best of both worlds for a while because I was still I covered 2 rounds of presidential campaigns while anchoring Good Morning America weekend. And then I left and came to NBC, which was 14 years ago now. I can't believe that.
It is. Well, yeah, because I think when I saw you and you were kind enough to invite me into the studio, it was still ABC, right there in Times Square, right?
Yeah.
Where you broadcast from? Yeah.
That's right. That's where Good Morning America is. Yeah.
That was very cool. And you mentioned the political campaigns. You also covered Sarah Palin's political campaign, right?
I did. I covered, that was the same year, right? So I covered Hillary Clinton from December 2007 until, remember, she didn't drop out until June because she was up against Obama in the primary.
Right.
She held on until June, which, by the way, my bosses had said, do you mind going out on the campaign trail with Hillary Clinton? We think she'll have it locked up by February. Yeah. Like that was what everybody conventionally thought.
Sure.
And then this guy, Barack Obama, showed up. And anyway, and then they switched me after she dropped out. They switched me to Sarah Palin when she was named. Got to go to Alaska a couple of times, which was pretty nice. And on election night, 2008, I was at John McCain and Sarah Palin's party in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's some important firsts in political campaigns. Not that they were the first females to run, but those were certainly very prominent females in prominent campaigns.
It was a whirlwind year for me. And the one of the best things about the job I have is when you are in a front row seat for historic moments. Happens in all different, not just politics, but all different ways. I've been at natural disasters where everybody remembers them. In 9/11, lots of different events that are like, I don't know, just life changing. And that year was definitely, yeah, there were some moments that year that were like, wow, I can't believe I'm seeing this up close.
Yeah. And was it, intuitive for you or natural, or was there some training or just people you observed where you're able to see, I'm seeing this thing where I need to sort of pinch myself, but I also need to interpret it or relay it or portray it for everybody else?
I guess at that stage, I'd been in this career for a while by then. Right. So, that's an interesting question because there is what I was going to say is I think I was sort of used to it by then, pinch me moment and I got to do my job.
Mm-hmm.
People ask me often about the emotional side of not just the pinch me moment, but when you're covering a tragedy and things are incredibly sad, how do you deal with that and do your job? That's not quite what you were asking, but I'll go there. Like it's hard. And I think it's maybe like the way a doctor does surgery. I'm guessing they can't think about what they're looking at in front of them and the blood. They have to just do their job.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that with TV journalists. You have to be present and understand what's happening, but you also can't let yourself completely fall apart in that moment. So you do your job. And then what I do is I go to my therapist after.
Yeah.
And unload and talk and, process the emotions that I felt. And I have been really open and vocal about that. I cover a lot of mental health stories now, a lot. And it's really, really important to access those emotions at some point and not just bury it all.
No, it's traumatizing. And I wanted to ask you about that because you did something very brave and I think beautiful in terms of, I believe it was your father-in-law's mental health struggle that obviously ended with suicide. And you talked publicly about how that impacted you, not just to talk about yourself and that experience, but I think to help other people. So how did you make that decision? And I know that's become a platform for you, which is really nice to see.
Yeah. Thank you for asking about that. My father-in-law, John, Chris's father, my husband's father, was a wonderful human being, just jovial, always looking out for everybody else, helping everybody in the family. He was the fix-it guy who'd come visit us. He was in Chicago. My husband grew up there, and he would come visit and fix all the things on our list, in the house. He also was struggling with depression, and we really, as a family, I certainly didn't understand the depth, and I think my husband would say the same, that we didn't understand the depth of the struggle. And we knew that fall that he was struggling, and we thought he was getting the right kind of help, and everybody was trying, remotely trying to help. And my sister-in-law, who's in the medical field, was just about to take him to a new psychologist. And on a Sunday afternoon, right before Christmas, he took his own life. It was absolutely devastating. It makes me emotional to talk about it right now. To get that phone call, we were about to have a Christmas party in our house. We were about to have our friends come over to our house for a Christmas party, and the phone rings, and it's this life-changing news. And that moment and that experience, and then the weeks and the months and the years after that had just really changed my perspective on mental health. And we didn't talk about it at first because we had little kids, and everybody on Chris is one of 5 siblings. So everybody had little kids, and we didn't want them to hear about Auntie Kate on the news talking about their grandpa, right? Their papa, we called him. So we waited a while, and eventually, after maybe 5 years, I was doing an event I had been asked to speak or host at the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention annual benefit. Because I did do some reporting, even at that time, on mental health. Hadn't yet talked about John's story, but I did, with the permission of my family, my extended family, I did talk about him that night. And that led to me writing about it and being open about it in a way that was actually felt really good, right? To be able to say to other people, like, you're not alone. My family's experienced this too, and we can talk about it. It's okay to say the word suicide. It's okay to ask somebody who you can see is struggling. It's okay to say, hey, are you having any dark thoughts? Are you having thoughts about hurting yourself? That's okay to ask. And I don't know, hopefully somebody listening now, maybe this will help at some point.
My family and extended family has been touched by that issue as well. So hearing you share your heart and your family's situation has been helpful for us as well. So thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad to hear that. All of us, this is, to this day, something I really care about. I started at that point, job wise, I started really raising my hand to do even more mental health reporting. And I have over the past 14 years since he left us, done a lot of things. It's not all I do, but I tend to, at NBC, I started really gravitating toward, for lack of a better term, stories about the human condition. So mental health, substance use, sexual assault and abuse, missing children is why we met in the first place. Just, I don't know, stories that just affect people deeply, and also stories that weren't getting enough attention I was drawn to. And that's where like I did a series of stories about abuse in group youth homes. I did a series of stories about the way you would relate to this as a lawyer, the way that family courts handle custody disputes and domestic abuse. Complicated story.
Very, very imperfectly is how they handle it.
So anyway, that's the sense of what I've been doing at NBC, although I've also had other roles in my 14 years here.
Yeah. And how again, I mean, it's who you are now, but you got there somehow. You bring this, and I'm sure you'll say there's others that do it, or it's just a job, but I've followed your career, and I've got to be on the front end of at least one of your stories. And you bring such a compassionate human quality to the very first meetings with the people who are dealing with these misfortunes, whether they're systemic things or whether it's just this one moment. And now here they are dealing with this horrible thing, and people are sticking microphones in their face. And but you are able to have this really human conversation with them that, there's almost relief that they achieve in those conversations I've seen. How do you pull that all together?
I appreciate that. Thank you very much for saying that. I think the word that comes to my head is respect. I respect everyone I talk to. People who have been through trauma, I mean, I don't want to re-traumatize them. And I've sort of learned, I think this is a skill that I developed, that I built over years of practice. I think I was innately kind because of my parents, my mother, my dad, that they taught me to be kind to people. But I did build the skill of sort of how to approach someone who's just been through a tragedy, or how I just 2 weeks ago talked to people who lost family at Columbine, which is, decades ago. Now, 25 years ago is why we were there. But you have to, with each of these interviews, be kind and respectful and walk people through what you're doing too. I think I try to be transparent when I sit down with someone. I say, you just have to look at me. We're having a conversation. You don't have to look at the camera. If I say something that's too much, you can refuse to answer. Or not refuse, but you can say, hey, I don't want to go there. It's okay.
Right.
I approach it differently when I'm interviewing a newsmaker, right? Who's on the record. And
oh, sure.
I'm not going to say to President Biden, you can say you don't want to answer that question. That's a different game.
Pass.
But for people who've been through something rough, like this is important, I think, to kind of make them comfortable with this situation. They're in control of how much they say.
Yeah, and that
And
shows.
yeah, well,
One
thank
great
you.
one great example of that, and you won an Emmy for it, is the interview of at least one of the at that time accusers, now adjudicated victims of Bill Cosby. Talk about that experience, and not just the interview,
Yeah,
but I mean the recognition that you and the story got as a result of that.
thank you. I actually, I'm thinking of two different interviews. So I think you're referring to Andrea Constant, who
Correct.
was the accuser in Pennsylvania who led to Bill Cosby's conviction, which has since been overturned by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
But even before that, I actually interviewed a group of, Andrea wasn't there, but a group of about, I think it was 26 women in one room. Hope I have that number right. It's
I do
23 or
remember that.
26.
Yes.
And that was in a hotel ballroom on risers. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Women gathered in chairs on risers. It was a moment I will never forget in my career, because all these women had already come forward in various ways publicly, either on social media or in the press, and said that they, to some degree, were either harassed or assaulted by Bill Cosby. And we brought them all together, not just me, I mean, the Dateline team,
Right.
a whole team of producers brought these women together. And it was so powerful because they had not met, most of them had not met each other. And yet they were telling incredibly similar stories.
Right.
Again, I will say his Pennsylvania conviction has been overturned. So he's a free man now, and he, to this day, maintains his innocence. But in that moment, in that room with those women, it was really, really powerful.
Yeah, no, I remember that. I remember that very well, and it was like nothing I've ever seen in terms of having them all together, and then them building on each other's narratives based on the individual experiences they had.
Tricky interview, though, trying to,
yeah,
I mean, even just the art of managing just imagine any 26 people in a room, and you're trying to ask them questions one by one. That's just a hard logistics problem. But then couple that with what they were describing as trauma, what they, were saying was abuse, and the feelings and the emotions. Somebody passed out during the interview. You didn't see that on TV, but somebody did. Somebody else, I'm pretty sure, was intoxicated.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and watch that.
There was a lot going on in that room.
Yeah. I mean, different personalities, different introverts, extroverts.
And that interview then sort of led to me covering the trial in Pennsylvania. I wasn't there the whole time, but we had producers there constantly, and I went in and out. And I met the attorneys for Andrea Constant, who again was the sort of the accuser in that case. As you know, it's legally a very complex story how her case ended up coming to fruition. But those were the charges that Cosby was charged on, were all around Andrea Constant, although they brought in other witnesses with other stories external to hers. And after he was convicted, I sat down and did the only interview, really the only lengthy interview that Andrea has ever done. And that was something too. Just she hadn't told her story at all publicly.
Yeah, it was very moving, and you and obviously the content were recognized. So congratulations on that and all of your successes.
Pretty proud of that, Emmy. Thank you very much.
I bet.
Appreciate it.
Where do you keep an Emmy? Where does one keep an Emmy?
Oh, they're actually. We're on a Zoom right now as we're talking. Let me see if I can turn.
Oh, you got one right there?
Oh, hold on. There's a bunch.
Oh, wow. Oh my goodness! Look at all those beautiful ancient
Can you
things.
See that up there?
Yeah, on the top of.
Yeah, it's the hardware's up there.
That's where they go. I don't know. You need to get a shelf or something.
I don't do that. I'm not doing that to brag. It's really,
I asked.
Not. It's, you asked. And you know, what's funny is I'm very honored by that. I've won some Emmys, I guess 5. Okay. I won 5 Emmys and some other, the DuPont Award and some other, the Gracie Award. It's not really about that for me. Obviously
Sure.
I'm trying to do a good job, but it's nice to feel that people notice when you do work that you're proud of.
Absolutely.
The reason they're in here, Michael, is because where else am I going to put them? Like in my house? Like I'm going to put them on the mantle? That's weird.
I've always thought that'd be difficult for like kids to come into the house and they'd be like, how am I ever going to impress mom? She's got Emmys on the fireplace.
That is a part of it. I don't want to like intimidate anyone with these like this hardware. So yeah.
That seems fair. Well, you've been gracious with your time. I do have one question to finish with, and
Yeah.
it's only appropriate because you ask questions for a living. So I want to ask
Oh
you,
no.
Kate Snow, no, just simply, what's the one question that you've always wanted to be asked or that you would ask you if you were me? Because you do this for a living.
Oh, wow. That's a good question.
I know how much you love being on that side of the mic.
I mean, I guess I would ask, why do you do this?
And so therefore I will ask, why?
You know, in the beginning, when I started in broadcast journalism early on, I just liked it. I just thought it was fun and it was interesting and every day was different. Now I would say the why is because stories that I tell can actually help people.
Mm-hmm.
Not always, but more than I expected.
Yeah.
Just by informing people, right, about what's going on in the world, you can actually make a difference sometimes. One person sees a story that I do about a novel new way to transplant lungs, double lung transplants that are being done in, this is a true story, Northwestern Medicine in Chicago is doing double lung transplants for lung cancer patients. I did a story on that a year ago. And just recently, I did another story about a guy who saw my first story and we saved his life.
Wow. That's literally
because he saw my first story and he called Northwestern and they shipped him from LA where he was to Chicago. It's a long story. Look it up. It was unbelievable to me that somebody reached out by email from Northwestern and said, Kate, you have to see this. You saved this guy.
Yeah.
That's impact. And you know, it's one person, but it's one person.
Yeah. That's enough. That's enough.
It's enough. Yeah. So I guess that's, you know, I remember early on thinking that I didn't know if I wanted to stick with this career because I would only be reporting on big things that other people did, right? I would be reporting on like other people were doing the work and I would just be reporting on their advances and their accomplishments. But now it's kind of flipped because I see the impact that I can have too.
Yeah, that's great. What a neat evolution and observation. And I know you're just in the middle stride of your career, at least I hope.
Thank you. That's very kind.
No, but I think those stories, the impacts of those individuals are incredible, but the way that you cover stories, I can't say it with the right emphasis or eloquence, is unique, and something that we need so much in this divisive world where people feel like they have to pick a side. You do a really good job of telling stories and informing us about the news in a way that it's just very easy to receive. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
No, you're very kind. Thanks for being on the show, Kate. You're amazing.
Thanks so much.
Well, there you have it. A fascinating discussion with a fascinating person who's spent a career talking to fascinating people. Kate Snow. Gosh, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. So many things we learned. I hope you could just perceive her kindness as you would if you followed her career or watched her cover any of these news stories. But it was so much fun to get her. Well, I mean, microphones don't have sides, but to get her answering questions rather than asking them for a minute, because you could tell that wasn't where she was most comfortable. Obviously, she's not used to being the story, with a few notable exceptions, like talking about her father-in-law's suicide. And actually, if you Google it, she did a fascinating job during the pandemic, sort of narrating and also giving a very personal experience of her husband, Chris's COVID. He got COVID early and severely, and walk through that experience. But with the exception of those couple things, she is not usually the news story. And it was fun to talk to her and just to understand how her heart works and her methodology. And of course, the incredible firsts on her path to success. I said to her, and I'll say again, we need more objective reporting. We need more non-divisiveness. We need more human aspects of the news stories so that We're not just covering this happened to this person, but you get to know as much as you can in 5 or 10 or 15 minutes of a news story, if you're lucky, the hearts of the people, the lived experiences of the people that are in the stories, so that it's not just fodder for political debate or for divisiveness or for social media feeds, but whether you agree with somebody or disagree, whether you, have ever experienced what they experienced, and in fact, particularly if you haven't, getting that opportunity to get to know someone's heart in those moments is what unites us, or has the possibility of uniting us. And I think Kate Snow does that as well as anybody else. So I hope you enjoyed the story. I hope you will share that interview with other people. I hope you will come back and listen, and I hope you will subscribe. Look forward to talking to you again on the My First Rodeo podcast.